All right, today I am celebrating my county Democratic Party. Yesterday, the Albany County, Wyoming Democrats met for our election year platform development convention. And it was the first time that I had participated in one of these conventions, so I didn't quite know what to expect. The way that the process worked is that there was a dedicated group that had brought us a draft that was really very good work, and it had been based on getting a lot of input from folks. And then we spent about 3 hours yesterday debating amendments to it. And our campaign brought 6 of those amendments, and I'm delighted to say that they all passed. And what I want to give you today is a little bit about what our campaign was advocating for and the outcome of those conversations, and then some other highlights from the convention and some things that I'm just really excited about that my campaign had nothing to do with getting included in the platform, and I'm really glad that those pieces are there. So one of the amendments that we got through, that our campaign proposed and we got through, was including explicitly the Green New Deal. There had been some kind of fuzzy language about, like, we'll do the right thing kind of energy to it, but not super specific. Now, of the things that I brought to the floor yesterday, this was the one that had the least amount of support. It passed with a 56% yes vote, but it did still pass. It includes language about supporting rural states like Wyoming, which I think is really important. And it's not really surprising that this one passed by a slimmer margin than the other things that we brought, both because we live in Wyoming, which is still very fossil fuel dependent, and because the party at a national level is infighting about this rather than just getting it done. It's been disappointing that the Democrats have controlled the House for this long and have yet to do major climate legislation. But Albany County, Wyoming has now stated our intent to clearly support it, and I'm really happy about that. I also brought, similarly, there was more open language about access to healthcare, and I proposed that we actually include the phrase Medicare for all. And that conversation was really interesting. There's still a lot of confusion about what it being like really just like Medicare rather than a much more robust program. And Medicare sucks in a lot of ways. And so we ended up in that conversation, and I thought it was really productive. Medicare for all is kind of a misnomer, and I'm kind of sad that that was the language that caught on, because I think people support the content of what's in the Medicare for All proposal, and by that I mean the Bernie Sanders version, and they get tripped up on the language. So Medicare for All, that thing, is different from Medicare in that there's no deductibles or copays, and it covers things like long-term care, prescriptions, vision, and dental without those being add-ons that cost you more money. And the fee for it is on a sliding scale based on income. So that language, Medicare for All, got pushed back. But what we ended up with in the platform, which I'm super happy about, and I accepted as a friendly amendment, was single payer healthcare, which in some ways is actually stronger language, and I think easier for people to wrap their heads around without going down that rabbit hole. So it did pass with a very, very strong support, and I'm happy about that. And so the platform now includes the language single payer healthcare, which is great. So we also got a plank in there that I had proposed, which was kind of an anti-racism statement. We initially passed one version of the statement with a little bit stronger language, and then ended up kind of softening the preamble. We moved from acknowledging that the United States was founded upon racism to saying that our history is intertwined with it. And I think that's fine. It's also an accurate statement, even if it's not quite as strong as I would like it to be, because what that preamble was leading up to that we did get with strong support was both reparations and acknowledgement of treaty rights in the platform. And the most important thing to me is that those policy pieces are represented in the platform regardless of how we're framing it leading up to that. So that third amendment that I proposed and we got through was reparations and treaty rights. So worker ownership passed with 91% yes vote, which is amazing to me. So one of the kind of sub goals of this campaign was education about what socialism actually means, that it's not about government overreach and the government owning everything or controlling everything, but really about workplace democracy and democratic control of the economy, which translates in concrete terms into worker ownership and a strong public sector. So to have my local party enthusiastically support one of those pillars feels like a giant win for this campaign. The reality is that, you know, when people actually hear and understand the core concepts of socialism, they tend to make sense to most people. And that was really true yesterday, and I was really happy to get that into the platform. I'm really pleased as well to have gotten in a disability rights plank. So folks with disabilities are often some of the most neglected in the political process. And that was true of the initial draft of the Albany County platform as well. There was just no mention of people with disabilities anywhere. But adding it passed really easily. And I don't think there was even any debate about it. I think I proposed it, people kind of nodded, we voted on it, and it passed. So finally, we included language condemning abuse and harassment of any kind by political candidates and electeds. And this also felt important to me to add as an amendment. And it was tagged onto a piece that was already in there about integrity among elected officials, which is great. This just, again, got us a little more specific and concrete. And I had decided to make that suggestion after a Facebook conversation last week in which somebody kind of derisively said that they never thought the Democrats would ever be willing to say anything like that. And somebody else said, well, have you asked? And at that point, I committed to asking, and will also take that to the state convention where I will be seated as a Bernie delegate for Albany County. So that was the other fun thing yesterday, is to see the folks who've been selected as delegates to represent our county to the state convention. Now, if you're interested in participating in the Democratic Party state convention, I know at least for Albany County, there are still a few alternate seats for both Biden and Sanders delegates. So you can reach out to the county party to get in on that if you're interested. So some other things that happened that I thought were really interesting that weren't about what our campaign was bringing, but were what other folks are bringing. So somebody moved to take out the plank in favor of legalizing marijuana. And I'm really happy to say that it didn't even get a second. And that feels really good. It felt like, you know, folks were really on board with legalizing marijuana. Makes sense for Wyoming. I also want to celebrate Jackie Grimes, who is running for my district's state Senate seat. She proposed and got added in a few things as well. I mean, I sort of feel like Jackie and I were sharing the amendment diva role for the convention, and it was really fun learning a lot more about how her mind works. And so a couple of the things that she proposed and got passed was adding the plus sign at the end of the LGBTQIA run of letters. You know, it's just a more inclusive one that sort of recognizes the evolution of our concepts about sexual identity and our desire to be ever more inclusive on that front. So props to Jackie for bringing that up. She is also an educator and got a provision for early childhood education added into the platform. So I really like Jackie. I think she's great. I hope if you are in her district, you will join me in voting for her. And then there were some things that were already in the platform that I'm really happy about. So a lot of them are standard talking points, I think, for just about any Democratic Party platform. You know, women's rights, increased minimum wage, renewable energy, supporting public education. So there's sort of this package of things that, like, if you would expect it to be in a Democratic Party platform, it's probably in there. But then there were some things that I think are more controversial within the Democratic Party nationally that I was really happy to see in the platform. So there's a great section on criminal justice reform. It talks about restorative justice, police accountability, and opposing private prisons and immigration detention facilities, which has, of course, been a big issue in Wyoming with the WYO Say No movement and their work to block the Uintah County proposed facility, but also obviously has national implications as well. And it includes, the platform also includes adequate funding for public defenders who are notoriously underfunded. So great to see that in the platform, and I had nothing to do with that. So there's also a section that talks about community and interdependence. And in addition to childcare, paid sick leave, and parental leave, also includes elder care, which is a topic that I think doesn't get talked about enough. And so happy to see that in there. There's also a section under that subheading around affordable housing and affordable internet, both of which are issues that we've seen much more on people's mind with coronavirus. I also really love the section on public lands and protecting the ecological integrity of Wyoming's open spaces, including a mention about wildlife corridors, which is a great, smart, simple example of how humans practicing non-interference and sort of staying out of the way of the natural world is actually one of the more important things that we can do ecologically. So finally, I want to highlight that the foreign policy section includes recognition of international labor standards and child labor laws, and includes basically my favorite two-word phrase in the entire platform, which is end wars. Thank you so much for including that, whoever got that tucked into the platform. So overall, my experience with the convention yesterday and seeing the platform in its completed form leaves me with the impression that within the Democratic Party, at least in my county, I'm not actually that much of an outlier in terms of real policy. And, you know, I know that my candidacy has kind of made some party insiders a little bit nervous, but unless they're afraid of what their own membership actually believes, maybe they could chill out a little bit about that and pay more attention to actual policy. So I just want to say hats off to the Albany County Dems. I'm celebrating your good sense, your cooperative attitudes in the whole process of developing our platform, and the commitment to accountability and progressive values that I feel like our final platform represents. So thank you so much for all of your work on that. And I see I'm being joined by Glenn, and I don't know if you want to toss anything in, Glenn, about, I've been talking about the Albany County Democratic platform that was approved yesterday.
I just wanted to say how impressed I was by how progressive it was.
Yeah.
Especially the policies we put forward. Yeah, I just think it was a real testament to how, you know, these policies, as you just mentioned, are becoming, you know, more mainstream. And I think, you know, the dial has been shifted left within the party.
Yeah, it was really refreshing. I didn't really know what to expect going into it yesterday, and kind of was approaching it with this combination of like hopefulness and a little bit of trepidation. And it turned out that my hopes were justified and my trepidation wasn't. And that felt really good. I actually felt like I was really able to be part of the process yesterday. And like I say, you know, didn't really feel like an outlier at all. It was good.
It's awesome.
Yeah, great. All right. Well, thanks for coming out to celebrate the party with me. And I'm going to wrap us up, but happy to have everybody here. And I think this Thursday, I'm going to be talking about marijuana legalization. So if you're interested in that topic, join me on this coming up Thursday on Facebook Live at 12:30. Thanks.